Hello everyone, how is your day going? I hope all is well with you. I welcome you to our 11th lecture. Our lecture today is going to be about the use of symbol in poetry, and specifically we will be talking about private literary symbols. So welcome again to our 11th poetry lecture, and let us get started by talking about private literary symbols. Just a reminder, symbols can be divided into universal, as we have explained in the 10th lecture, and we took as an example William Blake's The Lamb, and we tried to explain why we classify the lamb as a universal symbol. Today we are going to talk about private literary symbols, which are based on the personal experience of poets, where they use symbols that acquired their meanings from the way they were used in a specific literary work, and outside this literary work, these symbols do not mean the same. So it's the poet who endows the private symbol with meaning by using images, motifs, similes, metaphors. The poet creates a sort of symbol, and this symbol is an individual or a private symbol. Today, our example is going to be taken from Robert Frost. Robert Frost is famous for his wintry poems. He wrote a lot of poetry about winter and about snow. Today we will discuss his poem Dust of Snow as a private symbol. Now, as you can see, the poem is very short and simple, and the title is Dust of Snow. I know, guys, you still remember what we studied in Introduction to Literature. We studied Stopping by the Woods, and it was also about snow. This time we will see a very simple and yet profound symbol based on dust of snow. The poem, as you can see, consists of two stanzas, and all the lines are enjambed, as you can see. Only the last line is stopped. The poem goes on as follows. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. Okay. Now the poet is speaking about a wintry moment. To most people, the wintry moment this poem describes would be no more than an ordinary incident. It might even be an annoyance. But to someone like Robert Frost, the moment takes on special importance. Uh, all these meanings are presented in the poem, which is made up of a single sentence, divided into two stanzas. And I think what we should be doing is interpretation, trying to interpret the meaning of these two short stanzas. Dust of Snow is only 8 lines and seems to be the simplest of short poems. It has full end rhyme and short lines, and on the surface, the two stanzas appear to be nothing more than a snapshot of trivial event concerning a crow, a tree, snow, and a human being. Notice, crow offers contrast to snow. A tree and a human being have always been connected with meanings. Yet, as always with Robert Frost, our poet, you can feel that beneath the surface there will be deep worlds of meaning and rich possibilities. And here I quoted Frost, who once wrote, "It is what beyond that makes poetry. What is unsaid in any work of art? It is unsaid part is its best part." And this reminds me of the famous saying which says, "The most beautiful words are the words which are not said." So, actually, as I always said in our early lectures, before this kind of pandemic prevented us from seeing each other, I always said that poetry should be precise, concise, and up to the point. And the poet must say a lot of things in a small poem. And this is exactly the talent that Frost is really good at. So, Dust of Snow here is a short and yet neat poem. It has rhyming lines and rhythmic beat, but all of these things, whether we speak of the rhythm, the rhyme, or the form, are all simple. But the power of this poem lies in its simplicity. It even reflects the rather bleak minimalist imagery. The poet uses the minimum number of images. Okay? So now let us see what's going on and what's up with the title. Now, who is the speaker in the poem? When you read the poem, it will take you no time to see that the speaker is a man under a tree. The man was passing and he is under a tree. It's definitely winter because there is snow on the tree. Now we have a man, we have snow, we have a tree, but what kind of tree are we talking about? It's the hemlock tree. And for your information, the hemlock tree is a poisonous tree. It's a poisonous tree. And the crow has happened to send some snow dust down on the man. Notice the contrast that we have in the image of the crow, which is a black bird, and snow, which is extremely white. So it seems to me that the poet is building up imagery which are all based on contrast. Whether the dust of snow falls on the head of the man or down his neck is unknown, because this is not something that we need to know. What we need to know is that dust of snow fell on the man. And the most important thing is that the creature that shook snow on the man is a crow. And a crow is often associated with bad omens, because it's black. So the important thing is dust of snow, which is white and which could symbolize something positive, has been shaken on the head of a man by a crow. But once again, the reader is left to imagine the bird's specific action. Whether the crow is preening, merely shaking, flying off, or landing, or readjusting its feet on a branch, we don't know. Somehow, a light dusting of snow is the result, and it lands on the speaker. The whole act could have been a coincidence. We don't know. The poet uses a word which is shock, and shock is the past of the verb shake. Um, it could be that the crow is shivering in the snowy tree. For the speaker, this must have come out of the blue. The crow's action caused an unexpected fall of snow dust. Now, how does the poet compose his poem, or how does he structure the poem? If you notice, the first stanza of the poem says, "The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree." Now, this stanza has a specific function, which is setting the scene of the poem. Setting the scene of the poem. You can say also establishing the scene of the poem, but leaving a little bit of guesswork for the reader. And therefore, the reader is left with a question. In what way precisely did the crow shake down the dust of snow? In what way? We don't know. Now, each line runs into the next line. So if you remember our lecture about enjambment and end-stopped lines, we noticed that the poem has 8 lines. The first 7 lines are all enjambed. It is only when the poet reaches the conclusion, which is the 8th line, that he uses an end-stopped line. Remember, I always tell you that poetry is to be taken as a whole, and poetry is the fusion of sound and sense. So all the parts work to serve the whole. So enjambment must have had an important function in the poem. So the idea of building up a structure for the poem goes hand in hand with the rising beat that we associate with the iambic meter. You know, we always said that the iambic is the beat of life. So the first stanza flows really, and it goes smoothly into the second stanza, which is the more intimate part of the poem, as the poet starts to confirm his change of mood. Often the crow has a certain kind of meaning in our minds. And remember our lecture about connotations and denotations. Some words have negative connotations, and some other words have positive connotations. The crow actually carries negative connotations, and traditionally, whether in the Western culture or in our culture, the crow is given a bad name as a harbinger of doom, as a bringer of doom, if you like, if you don't know the word harbinger, and fear. But is this fear used the traditional way? That is, okay, when you see a crow, you should feel frightened. Is the poetry enforcing the traditional image that we have in mind about the crow? Okay, yes, guys, the answer is no. The poet actually turned the traditional image of the crow upside down, and that's why we call this poem a poem that portrays a private symbol rather than um, uh, universal symbol. All right. So the speaker, because of the snow dust falling on him, finds himself partially relieved. His day just got a whole lot better. The event somehow allowing him to see life from a different angle. Now, the poem here tells us that out of the bad things, there could be something which is really good, which is really good. Notice if we just try to list down the words with negative connotations and the words with negative connotations, we notice that crow, hemlock, rude are all negative words. But if you think of uh, snow, saved, change of mood, all these words have positive positive connotations. Now here we notice that there are two verbs in this poem which are very, very significant and very crucial. Okay? These verbs are saved and rude. And these two verbs come in the second stanza. Now, rude and saved are used to serve the theme of the poem. For example, rude uh, is something that is regretted, and saved is something that was, really positive. After you feel that you were about to lose something, then this something was saved. So down came the dust of snow to regret something, which often cannot be undone, and the latter meaning to rescue or keep safe. So the poet says that the dust of snow caused a change of mood because the poet was about to regret something. But dust of snow caused him to save the day that he felt that he has already lost. Now, if we think of connotations of words as a key to understanding poetry, we have to notice that saved has religious connotations. For example, it is believed that Christians have been saved by Christ. Christ is the redeemer of human souls. So he saved them. Saved them from what? From hell, from loss, from whatever might be a cause of their spiritual doom. Now, is it really something that is related to the speaker's soul? I think the answer is in stanza 2. Has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rude. So obviously the poet here is not speaking about his soul, he is speaking about his day. His day was saved. So what is the question of the heart in the poem? Because stanza 2, which is line 5, line 5 of the poem, first line of the second stanza, the poet uses given my heart. So what's the issue with this thing? Now, is it the real heart or the figurative heart? If the figurative heart changes mood, then this is quite a profound shift. A profound shift. I mean a profound change in the attitude of the speaker. And this really explains the power that nature sometimes has over us as human beings. You know, Frost has been associated with romanticism, even though he is, an American poet, but he has been associated with American romanticism. Romanticism is an English movement. So, whether we speak of American romanticism or British romanticism, we're talking about nature having a healing effect on the human beings. Nature is a source of cure, a source of inspiration, and a source of peace to many writers, specifically those who are interested in the romantic movement. So it could be that the speaker has been stressed out or has been upset about something, and as a result, he decided to go for a short walk to try and think things through. Then, whilst alleviate the symptoms. So, it could be sometimes that you feel that you are down, or that everything around you is crumbling down. Then suddenly you live an experience in nature that changes your mood 100%. So it could be a poem that talks about a troubled speaker. This speaker is serious or a kind of rigid person. He could also be a self absorbed person, a person who really has a lot of trouble and he is always obsessed with these troubles that he faces. It could be the kind of person who keeps chewing the past, like he feels sad about something and keeps thinking about it. And while being deeply absorbed in this experience of regret and probably blame, suddenly there is the crow flapping from a high branch. Then down comes the freezing white dust to land straight on the poker faced speaker. So, um, isn't it really ironic that a creature like the crow, which is usually associated with negative aspects of life, should become the bringer of positive change? I think the message is clear enough. Something seemingly insignificant do natural do bring change. Something which is seemingly insignificant brings about change. Or, as we have it in the slide, sometimes seemingly insignificant natural events do bring about change because the speaker is outdoors in nature with all its unpredictability, can benefit anyone, anywhere, at any time. So here we have the fog cleared. We started to feel that the poem is trying to send us a message. Um, and I think you can imagine yourself uh, experiencing this kind of thing exactly like the speaker in the poem. Yeah. All right. So let me wrap up. Now, if we had not read the poem, if we had not explained the poem, and someone told us that there is something known dust of snow, I think we didn't have understood all the symbolism that we captured from this poem. It is only by reading the poem as a whole that we start to feel that out of insignificant things and out of mundane events that we experience every day, there could be the birth of hope. Now, as you can imagine, this poem was written to describe a person who had a sort of gloomy feelings, a sort of gloomy feelings. And suddenly he was out and something happened to him. Isn't this a good way of contemplating nature or even trying to think of our problems in a different way? Like, for example, why don't we consider God's blessings? Why don't we consider God's blessings? I think we have a lot of things that God gave us. And these things actually uh, these things are taken for granted, let me say. They are taken for granted. And because they are taken for granted, we never think of them. We never think of them. But actually, if something happens with us, it's a good idea to think about them. Okay. Sorry, because of this confusion of the slides, while recording a lecture, sometimes these technical problems happen. I just wanted you to have a look at the poem on the screen so that we could be, clear about the issues we are talking about. Um, Sometimes when you are down, or let me say, when you are singing your blues and you feel pessimistic, I think you should try this thing. Think of all the blessings of God. Think of all the things that you have got and others do not enjoy. Isn't this a good way of making you forget the dark side of life? I think yes. So, dust of snow, if seen in this context, could be a symbol of God's grace, and God's blessings. What I am trying to say is that the poet collected images which are very negative and images which are very positive, and he created a private symbol. The poet wanted to say that we have good things in life and we have bad things in life. And it's up to us whether to focus on the good things, which create hope, optimism, and a spirit to go on, or to focus on the bad things, which let us down and cause us to feel bad about life. Now, I can say that Dust of Snow came as a reminder of God's blessings and God's grace. So, even out of the negative things, we can get good things. So, the crow, which is a black bird associated with negative connotations, can cause us to feel better and try and improve our life by looking at the bright side and not to focus on the dark side. Now, finally, I would like to say that dust of snow is a private symbol because it has been used by Frost in a unique way, and this way is not true if we think of dust of snow in real life. It's only in this poem that dust of snow stands for God's grace and God's blessings. Outside this poem, dust of snow doesn't mean the same. So, this is exactly how a poet can create a private literary symbol. Okay, so here we come to the end of our lecture, guys. And I hope that you benefited from the lecture and that you are now able to distinguish between universal symbols and private symbols. So here, this is the conclusion of the second part of our course according to the plan. The first part was sound devices, and the second part was language devices. Now we will move to the crux of the course and the gist of it, which is types of poems. Next time, we will talk about the difference between subjective poetry and objective poetry, and we will start by a poem written by William Shakespeare to know what we mean by objective. And this will be followed by a poem written by Coleridge. Then we shall move and start talking about types of poems. Okay, so here we come to the end of our lecture for today. Thank you very much. See you next time, inshallah, with our section of subjective versus objective poetry. Goodbye.